Today, I am going to share with you the hidden story behind some gravestones here in this Revolutionary War burying ground in Acton, Massachusetts. Now, here is the particular group of stones that I wanted to show you. Who is this person here? We can't see a name, but this stone was erected in the 1840s, decades and decades after the end of the American Revolution, but it stands in the Revolutionary War section of Woodlawn Cemetery in Acton. And to make things even more mysterious, directly next to it is this small stone that says Captain Isaac Davis. But Isaac Davis isn't even buried in that cemetery. He's buried here, underneath this gigantic monument in the middle of the town of Acton. Captain Isaac Davis is not buried here, and yet we have a stone with his name on it. And if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that Captain Isaac Davis was killed on April 19th, 1775, as he led the militia toward the North Bridge in Concord, Massachusetts, on the first day of the American Revolution, April 19th, 1775. But what does he have to do with all of these stones? Well, as it turns out, a lot. Hi everybody, it's me, Katie. Welcome back to my channel where it is all Revolutionary War all the time. For those of you who have come along with me on previous historical action adventures, all right, now evidently I'm gonna have to climb over this. Oh no. Thank you so much for coming back. I'm so happy to have you with me. And for those of you who may never have stopped by this channel before, then welcome. My name is Katie. I'm a Revolutionary War researcher, writer, and speaker based in the Boston area. And this channel is intended to be a fun and friendly place where I share my research. Also on this channel, we visit battlefields, burying grounds, even city streets where events of the American Revolution happened. So if that sounds like fun to you, then I hope you'll consider buying a pair of action adventure pants and wearing them, because on this channel, you're going to need them. The events of the morning of April 19th, 1775 are already well documented, and I've done a couple videos on the events at the North Bridge in Concord, where some of the first shots of the American Revolution were fired, which resulted in the death of Captain Davis. But what about earlier that morning? What was happening? The Acton Company of Minutemen had all gathered at Captain Isaac Davis's house. And some of the men were making cartridges for their muskets there, and all of them were preparing for the march to Concord, as the alarm had reached Acton around daybreak that the British were out. Now, I just want to show you this grave. Remember how I said that the Acton Minute Company had all gathered at Captain Davis's house? This is the grave of one of the men who was here, and I just happened to come across his gravestone, and it actually says, "In memory of Thomas Thorpe, the last of Captain Isaac Davis's company of Minutemen." So really cool. Decades after April 19th, many of the men in his company left statements of what they remembered happening that morning, and he did leave one, but so did another man in the company named Solomon Smith. Many decades later, 60 years later actually, men who were at Captain Davis's house that morning, who were in their 20s in 1775, later when they were in their 80s, gave statements as to what they remembered happening that morning. And one of the men of Captain Davis's Minute Company, Solomon Smith, was 82 years old when he gave his statement. And Solomon Smith specifically remembered that on the morning of April 19th, Captain Davis's children were sick. And they were. They were very sick. In April of 1775, Captain Davis was 30 years old, and he lived with his 29-year-old wife, Hannah, and their 4 surviving children of the 6 that they had had. 2 of their children did not survive infancy. Here are the 2 gravestones of the 2 children that they lost prior to 1775. Hannah, who passed away in 1766, and Paul, who passed away in 1772. And both of them were just a matter of days old at the time of their passing. On the morning of April 19th, as members of the Acton Minute Company gathered at Captain Davis's house, Isaac and Hannah's 4 surviving children were battling what they would refer to as the canker rash, and what we more commonly today would call scarlet fever. Little bit of a content warning here, as we're going to talk a little graphically about disease. Scarlet fever, also sometimes called scarlatina or the canker rash, is caused by the same bacterial infection that causes strep throat. It's like strep throat gone wild, and it can develop into scarlet fever or the canker rash. And it's characterized by a high, violent fever, red, pustular rash, and extremely swollen, very, very painful sore throat. Sometimes in the 1700s, it's also referred to as putrid sore throat or ulcerated sore throat. And it was highly, highly dangerous to children in particular. And it was not a foregone conclusion that their children would survive. Not at all. And he recalled that one of the other men in the company evidently cracked a joke. He used some light words, Solomon Smith said, probably in an effort at a tension breaker of some kind. But Captain Davis reproved the man. He was in absolutely no mood for jokes that morning. His wife Hannah also remembered that he seemed very thoughtful and serious as they prepared to leave for Concord, but that he never seemed to hesitate a moment in his duty. Finally, it was time for the Acton Company to leave Captain Davis's house. And years later, his wife Hannah recalled that as Captain Davis began to lead the company from his home, he stopped and he turned and looked at her and he said, "Take good care of the children." And those were the last words he ever said to her. And if you recall from one of my videos that I filmed at the North Bridge in Concord, I kind of hinted at Captain Davis having much weighing heavily upon his heart and mind on the morning of April 19th before he met his fate at North Bridge. He must have felt the weight of his duty and responsibility to his minute company, to his town, to his family. But also, I think he would have felt the weight of worry for his children who were suffering from the canker rash and in grave danger. Later that day, Captain Davis's body was brought back home and laid out in their bedroom, while Hannah took good care of their children. So this is his original gravestone. Captain Davis was exhumed from his original resting place at Woodlawn Cemetery in Acton, and he was reinterred here in the base of this monument when it was erected in 1851, along with 2 other men from Acton who were killed on April 19th, Abner Hosmer and James Hayward. And this small stone here that says Captain Isaac Davis is his original footstone from when he was actually buried here. So back to the mystery grave. Who is buried here? Hannah. Hannah Davis is buried here. She died in 1841 at the age of 95 years old. She was 29 on April 19th. She lived for decades and decades, remarried twice, outlived both husbands, and she's buried under the name of Hannah Layton. And lastly, as to Isaac and Hannah's 4 children who were suffering with scarlet fever on April 19th, they aren't buried here at all because they lived. So for more detail on the moment-to-moment events leading up to the death of Captain Isaac Davis at the North Bridge, check out this video, which I'll post here. Thank you all so much for watching, as always, and I'll see you in the next video.